Welcome to Flight Path, the weekly podcast for the Tern community, where we share what's new, what's next, and what's coming to the platform you're helping us build. Kicking off season 2, we're focusing on group travel, a big theme this quarter. But that's just one part of our journey. We're also rolling out features for agencies, tackling your most requested updates, and yes, shipping product updates every single week. So join Tern's R&D leadership team, Molly, our head of product, David, Tern CEO and co-founder, and Brad, head of design, as well as an occasional special guest, as we bring you into the loop on everything happening at Tern. We're proud to be the only travel technology platform committed to weekly releases, and we couldn't do it without this incredible, engaged community. This podcast is for you, to keep you informed, inspired, and a part of the process. So if you're ready to stay connected with the latest from Tern, hit subscribe and join us every Friday on Flight Path. Let's keep building Tern together.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Flight Path podcast. We are so excited that you're joining us for another amazing week of product updates and kind of taking you behind the scenes of building Tern. If this is the first time that you're tuning in, my name's David, the CEO and one of the co-founders. We've got Brad, head of design, Molly, head of product, and we've got a full show for you today. So we're going to jump into it. And before I do that, we got to do the classic, click the like button, make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether you're watching this on YouTube where you can get the video version. We got some demos, so YouTube's a good place to watch this particular episode coming up. But we also have Spotify, we've got Apple Podcasts. So wherever you get your podcasts, you can tune in and subscribe. And if you like what you're hearing, go ahead and click that like button, add a comment. We love to hear it. With that, Brad and Molly, we're going to kick off with the week in review. Brad, let's start off with you. How was the week?
The week was all right. It's been a very busy week. Primarily on the product side, been working on landing pages for groups, which we're not going to demo today. But this is like the most hype I've been about a feature we're adding over the last couple months. One of our engineers was sharing screenshots of like a work in progress last night, and I was up too late checking my phone about work things, but just so excited about the progress we're making, and we'll talk more about that probably next week. But really cool to see that coming together. And then one other highlight this week is I got to talk with Abby from Friend Like Me Travel Company, and she owns a travel agency that's a partner with Tern. They're using Tern for I think they have 140 agents, primarily focused on Disney travel, and just getting to hear her story about how Tern has impacted their agency. Well, it was just my favorite conversation. I had a smile on my face the whole time. We're gonna write up more details of kind of her experience and the agency's experience and share it out. But two quick highlights for me. One, she was talking about how before processing a single commission statement from Disney would take 15 minutes per statement. Now it takes her 2 to 3 minutes. So she's saving 80% of her time, and that adds up when you're doing that every day, maybe multiple times a day for all the commission statements you're getting. And then the other thing she was saying is they adopted Tern, I think late September. Their first full month on Tern was October, and it was the highest sales they've had in their agency since April. So they, in the last 6 months, they were doing okay, and then they adopted Tern and they saw an increase in sales, which is just so cool to see that it's working. She was crediting that to how much time her agents are saving with things like automations and workflows, and to empower them to focus on the client experience and selling more travel. So super cool to hear, and really excited to share more of that within the next week or so.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. We were talking before the show, and Brad was sharing these stats and these stories, and it just kind of gives you chills, right? That this vision that we've had of the impact that technology can have is actually working, and it's actually having a impact on people's businesses. And Molly and Brad were joking are we good at our jobs? And I was you two are exceptional at your jobs, right? That is exactly how this happens. Molly, what's your week been like?
Yeah, well, just also plus to hearing those stories. It's so easy to get caught up in all the million things we need to fix and improve and add, and those things are all true, but it's really fun to hear those wins as well, and kind of zoom out and see the big picture. But yeah, it's been a very busy week. So in project land, shipping group itineraries, which we're going to talk about in depth. We're very close to shipping contact collaboration, which we won't go into in depth today, but That'll be a good one to do a deep dive on in the next week. And then there's a lot of projects to just get ready that are coming up. Our engineering team is getting too fast, actually. We were joking, they're too powerful. So Brad and I are just like really trying to work fast to get projects ready in time.
Good problem to have.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Good problem.
Yeah. And speaking of our engineering team becoming too powerful, it's really cool. We have a new engineer, Andrew, who is actually a travel advisor as well. And one really fun story, he's like pretty active in our Facebook group, and he noticed people like, why can't you filter by contacts, contact tags rather, in the Facebook community? So like on a Sunday morning, he like pulled in this pre-planned work we had done but hadn't quite gotten to, and just like knocked it off. And yeah, just really cool to see the impact of some of our new hires like right away. I think this is week 3. And it was one of those too where people would always ask us like, why can't I filter on tags? And we're like, we need to build it. Like we didn't, there's not a good reason. Like we really should support it. So that was really cool. Another cool story from the week, we had an agency owner reach out and be like, there's this one thing that I do in my other system that I can't do in Tern. It's like 2 extra columns on a payout export. And so we like knocked that off, and that was like the last thing she needed to transfer over. So just some of these like fun, quick wins coming through and really making a positive impact on users has been a fun highlight.
That like feedback loop, I think, is so powerful, right? It's like, oh, like this thing that you need is like not actually much work. We can slide it into this week. And the fact that we do like week-long cycles means that like it's pretty crazy. Even so I'll go into my week in review. Like I was at Cruise World this week. So continuing the marathon of travel that I have from end of October through the end of November, and probably now into early December. So this week was in Fort Lauderdale. We were at the Cruise World conference, and we hosted a happy hour for just people that wanted to come, a lot of Tern users, a lot of people who were curious about Tern. And it was so fun kind of hearing the stories and people kind of saying over and over again, like the thing that really differentiates Tern is not only that we listen, but that we have the kind of R&D kind of aptitude to be able to like ship quickly. And so when we think about timelines, we were talking about some kind of agency feature that we'll build in 2025. We're like, yeah, like that's a little bit farther on the roadmap. Like we're currently thinking that'll probably be like a March, April thing. And they're like, when we hear far out, we think like 2030, right? Like that's what this industry is used to. And so like the fact that we're talking like early next year is I think just such a cool differentiator and such a cool kind of testament to the team and give everybody kind of the kudos across the R&D org for making that happen. But it was really fun being able to connect with users and prospects and talking to agency owners and advisors. We had people that kind of drove in just to attend the happy hour, which was really special. And then, of course, yesterday doing the trade show where it was like 3 hours of just demoing Tern. Actually demoed some of the things that we're going to show here, which literally were right hot off the presses. So it was always a fun week getting to kind of spend time with users and prospects and kind of just showing off what we're building at Tern and kind of bragging on the team. It was also fun because I got to meet Brooklyn and Courtney, podcast guests of past, for the first time in person. So it was kind of neat spending time with them and just getting to know them better beyond the Zoom screen. So it's been a good week. I'm coming to you live from the Fort Lauderdale airport. The Delta Lounge here has these nice phone booths that I've commandeered and set up my whole podcasting gear. So it's a vibe that's happening right now, but it's working. So it's been a good week all around. We're going to get into a couple big projects that have shipped. The first is scheduled send. I think this was like up there with one of the most requested features in Canny. This was like the next big evolution of our email feature. Brad, you want to kind of bring this to life? And then Molly, I think you're gonna show it off a little bit here, right?
Yeah. And I think we talked about this maybe last week or the week before, but one thing we're often hearing from advisors is they're not always working at the hours when their clients are expecting them to be working. So like maybe up a little late, catching up on tasks and things, and they get the itinerary done or the updates they want to do. And they're like, oh, I want to publish this thing now, but I don't want to send my client an email at like 1 a.m. Maybe 1 a.m. is an exaggeration, but you know the story. And so what we finally are able to do is, in addition to sending right when you want to, you can schedule it for later. And there's some quick actions that Molly will share to make it super quick, like tomorrow morning or next Monday, but also you can pick really any time you want that you think would be best for your client to receive any email update from you. So that could be publishing a trip, just sending them a one-off email, sending a form out. It works in all the places you can send email, and it sounds simple. It's a little more complicated behind the scenes to like think about what is an email that like hasn't actually been sent but will go out later. How does that fit into everywhere we show email in Tern? But we figured it out. Shout out to all the engineers who worked through all the edge cases there. And yeah, I know people are really excited about it once they kind of discovered it. I think it was Monday morning when we shipped it, and it was just this like deluge of like comments and Facebook like, oh my gosh, it's live. So it was really cool.
Yeah, that one was discovered. I keep thinking we're setting new records for when our users discover a feature before we've said anything about it. And this might have been another one. It was like 2 Facebook posts immediately, both just started accumulating likes, and we're like, we haven't even said anything about it yet. So I can quickly show what it looks like, as David mentioned. All right, let's see. We're not.
Oh, parallax.
I know. This is really available anywhere that you send emails, you know, from your trip emails, when publishing a trip, from your global inbox. When you write your email, you'll see this nice little drop-down option to, as Brad said, pick a quick time to send your email. You can schedule it really any custom time that you want. So if I want to send it this afternoon, it's now scheduled. I can see that it's scheduled in the email tab. I can remove it if I need to. We don't support direct editing, but definitely something, if that becomes a pain, we can. It was just a bit more work than anticipated to allow that. So something that we're very open to adding in the future. And then you can also see it in the global inbox. So pretty simple, but powerful feature.
And one of those things, like you said, there's a million technical edge cases, right? And at the same time, like we're building on this like email infrastructure, which is changing. Like it's but small, but mighty. And Brad, you mentioned a lot of this, like people working, kind of weird hours. We know a lot of travel advisors, it's like a second job for them, right? But what also I think is really powerful is being able to manage time zones. Like you may be working normal hours, but from like Budapest, and your clients are in San Francisco, right? So like not having it show up in the middle of the night for them, right, may just be like, this is so many cool ways to be able to manage that. So big update coming. We're not done. Like this week, like we shipped scheduled on Monday, and then we're like, what else could we ship this week? And we're like, well, groups. Like we're working on this groups thing. That's the theme of season 2, our arbitrary season number. Let's talk about group itineraries, which was a pretty cool update. Molly, you want to kick us off with that one?
Yeah, for sure. And for those of you who haven't tuned in before, our goal with group travel, we may not hit it every week, but we want to release a feature for group travel every single week. That is our goal for the fall. So the feature of this week was group itineraries. And if you don't know already, we introduced last week the ability to actually create a group trip in Tern. This kind of served as like a folder or a shell for all of your sub trips that you're planning within the group. And you can also do things like have your group level settings. When you create sub trips, those automatically carry over to the sub trips for better efficiency. So we released that last week. People were really excited. And then this week we layered on itineraries and pricing to those group trips. So now you can set up a group level itinerary just like really any other trip you might plan in Tern. There's a few specific differences. We won't get into all the nitty gritty on the podcast. But the best way to think about it is kind of like a template that you're setting up for your group trip. And same with pricing, packaging, you can set all of those things up at the group level. And then when you create sub trips, they will automatically have those itineraries populated. They'll have the pricing automatically calculated when you add the travelers in. So just a lot more efficiency and consistency to the overall process. And then the other cool thing is before we have landing pages, which we will have landing pages very soon, but before we have them, you can also share out. You can publish and share out that itinerary to give people who may not actually have a trip yet an idea of the group that you're planning. And there'll be kind of a foundational building block for landing pages and self-service, which we're layering on soon. So one of the many puzzle pieces to allow your clients to discover a group through a beautiful marketing page and sign up on their own, but also just should add a lot of standalone value in the meantime.
And I know a lot of thought went in. You mentioned like pricing, right? Like there's so many details around like how do you generalize this trip? Like Brad, like what kind of went into like thinking through all of that?
Yeah, at first when we started, we're like, oh, this is going to be so easy. It's just like you take what works for a trip today and you just like copy and paste it at the group level. It's like, oh, we have drag and drop itinerary builder. Got it. You know, you can bring in anything you can bring into an itinerary. It just works. And then we thought we made it to everything. We're like, wait, what about this pricing thing? And the real problem, well, maybe there's like two unique things to groups. If you're pricing per person today in Tern for like activities or maybe even for rooms, depending on what setup you have, in order, like what we do on a regular trip today is we show you a calculated price. We will show you maybe the rate, like, oh, it's $500 a person, but then we show you the actual price is like $1,000 because it's based on 2 people. And if you don't have any people, we don't show you price at all because we're like, it's $0. There's nothing to show you because there's no travelers on this. So we don't need to show a price. Well, on a group, there are no there's no travelers at this like group shell level. And so, or you don't know how many travelers, if you're looking at it as someone who wants to sign up for the group, we don't necessarily know like what calculated amount to show you. So we had to basically rip all of the calculated things out and then replace them with just the rate. So like this is $500 a person or $500 per person per night or whatever the rate might be. So that was like one big focus area. And then the other thing that's unique about groups is often you're presenting more options on a group trip than you do on a regular trip. And what that might look like is, especially today and with the way groups work, advisors might set up kind of like a template that has all the options on there that aren't necessarily structured as options. And they don't want it to look like, oh, the overall cost of this trip is like $20,000 because it's adding up like all of the different packages you could pick from. So we had to think about that as well and like make sure that we weren't kind of inflating the overall price of the trip or the price of just like a hotel because you have 3 different room options on there, but like the person's not actually going to purchase all 3 of those room options. So that was something we had to like kind of go through, investigate each piece, and then figure out what made more sense at the group level. And pricing we know is going to be like just there's more and more we're going to have to do for groups, that like adding things like occupancy rate, stuff like that. But we're making progress, setting some good foundations there, and then from here on out, it'll just be kind of like expanding that functionality and not having to like rethink everything like we had to this time around.
And what's really cool, I think Spencer worked on a lot of this, one of our engineers. I think he took the time to clean up and make some of this more consistent in terms of how it's actually like wired up and built to make changes easier in the future, because that's what he does. He always likes to do that. Yeah, it should also just foundationally be a good spot to build on more in the future.
Yeah, the complexity that goes into just like pricing and packaging a trip is like kind of mind-boggling, right? And to your point, like what we're sort of building towards here is eventually this like sort of booking flow, right? Like for a group. And in order to like support booking, like you need to have all these different ways to model the pricing, and like to the point that both Brad and Molly made, like we'll iterate on that over time and get more and more sophisticated, but we have to kind of wrestle with this like pricing engine in a way that just an itinerary builder doesn't have to, right? Because you type in the numbers. And so it's a cool evolution of the kind of Tern product, I think, to really be embracing that and taking what we've learned already and building on it. So more to come on that. Any other thoughts on the group thing before we can do a quick mini demo here?
I think go to the demo. There's plenty more to show in future weeks, but I think the demo will do a great job at showing it off.
Let's roll the demo here. So hopefully, there we go. I'm on the laptop today, so we'll see. So it was really fun. Like I said, I was at Cruise World. You can see because I was at Cruise World, I've got a lot of cruise related trips here in the demo site, but the groups kind of feature rolled out, I think, a couple hours before we were at the trade show. And so like, we got to demo this because a lot of cruises include groups. And so I'll just show a trip that's already existing here. You can see this kind of reunion. These are actually all part of this family reunion cruise. And you can see that this is an example of one of those group trips. It's got these 3 sub trips. If I click in on that, I can see this overview of the sub trips. And if you haven't already, you're going to want to register for the webinar coming up in December, where we're going to walk through all the elements that we've built for groups. But I'll just quickly go over to the left here and click on the itinerary tab. And this is where, again, the brand new this week, you can see we start to build out this itinerary, and it's going to look pretty familiar. If you've been using Tern for your itineraries, you can see that we have kind of all the details. You can add option blocks with different pricing. You can add all this kind of information here. And what happens is that once you've actually done that and you go back, whoops, wrong button, go back to the group, and I go now add a sub trip back from that overview, and I click on new here, I could now say that this is the Turner family version of this. Create that sub trip. You'll notice it's pre-filling the dates and everything based on the kind of trip details here. And once I've done that, we can now see that we have this trip, and it has all the functionality that you'd expect out of trips in Tern. I could start to associate those travelers. I could create different credit card authorizations. I could manage documents. I could kind of do all of that in this one place. But the really special thing is that when you click on itinerary, automatically, having done no extra work in the group, that itinerary has been applied here. And if I click on preview, I've got this kind of beautiful itinerary that my clients are now going to be able to access. And so you can start to see how this is the foundation for some of these kind of workflows where you have a landing page comes in, automatically creates that itinerary. That's the end state that we're sort of building towards, is this kind of full end-to-end booking flow where the client can come from a beautiful landing page to having an itinerary in their Tern app automatically, the kind of whole process. And so really, really special part of this, ton of work that went into it on all sides. And it was really fun to be able to demo this kind of live at Cruise World hours after it came out. So, and even the cool thing is, it makes sense because of course it would just work, right? But like some of these, this walking tour is an example. I actually was demonstrating how you can use the AI assistant on the group itinerary and just be like, hey, give me some ideas that my clients can do before they board a ship in Brisbane. And it populated this walking tour. You can start to use all the things that you'd expect on the kind of itinerary building process right from the group level and have that automatically kind of push down when you create those new sub trips. So pretty cool to see this come to life. Easy enough. So that's really fun. Any other kind of thoughts on group itineraries, groups generally, before we move on to kind of our week ahead? Making great time on this podcast. This might be one of our shorter.
2 features down, and we're only just getting started.
Nailed it.
2 features down. We got it done. Okay, we're going to go to the week ahead now. And we've got some things happening. Molly, we're going to go in reverse order from the kind of week in review. Molly, kick us off. What's the week ahead look like?
Oh my gosh. Well, like I said, engineering team's getting too powerful, so we have to get lots of features ready. So I'll be doing a lot of testing and like documentation and enablement for landing pages, fingers crossed. I think that should complete next week. So we'll talk about that in depth in the next podcast. Getting the next pieces of group travel ready. So there's a few building blocks that I won't spoil, but coming after landing pages to kind of set us up well for self-service sign-up that we're going to be working through. And then we're also doing some really fun stuff around collaboration. So the ability to reassign trips. So like if a trip comes in at the agency level and you want to reassign it to one of your agents, or maybe you're working more closely as a team and someone's really swamped and they need to switch over the ownership of the trip to somebody else. And it turns out, as always, there's a lot more complication than meets the eye there. And so there's some sub projects in there that we're working on that we'll talk about next time as well that we're getting ready.
Yeah, basically just supporting Molly and all of those things. She really there's like some sleeper hits in there in the trip reassignment project. There's some really cool stuff people have been asking for that we're just going to have to do to make that happen. So stay tuned. I guess we're not spoiling things today. So we'll talk more about it later. And then, yeah, to Molly's point, I think the primary design focus next week is going to be working through like making things bookable on groups, which basically means like, how do you structure the different packages you can let people book, the room options, things that they can like pick like when they sign up versus later? That's kind of like the most complicated problem we've been been on our mind since the beginning, but we haven't had to address it. And so that's probably going to be like 90% of my brain power over the next week, trying to make that happen. Probably a lot of like jam sessions with Molly and some engineers to figure out how we make it work. And likely that'll get split probably into like some smaller pieces as well. So that's probably going to be the main focus for me next week. Sure, I guess. All right. Well, looks like we lost David. I guess the airport Wi-Fi maybe is not as trustworthy as we hoped. But if he doesn't pop back, we'll just wrap it up here. No idea what David's week ahead looks like. I bet he's traveling again. I know there's like tons of conference we're going to, but I'm sure you'll hear more about that next week when you tune in. But yeah, that's all we had planned for this week. So thanks again for joining. If you like the episode, like and subscribe. Tell us all the things you enjoy in the comments. And as always, thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen with us.
Thanks, everybody.
See you next week.